Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another ProcureTech Wonders. I am Amanda Prochaska, the Chief Wonder Officer of Wonder Services, and I love bringing awesome ProcureTech to you, plus some awesome people like Rose here today. So Rose, you and I have been around together for a while now. You are the founder of Sudozi, which, gosh, I love your story coming from the CFO space and building a ProcureTech that you wish you had. So I'm so excited to get going with you today to learn more about it, to share your awesome work with the listeners today. So welcome to ProcureTech Wonders.
Awesome. Thank you for having me here. So excited to dive in.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start before we get into the 15-minute hot seat, and then we'll go on to the 15-minute demo after that. But before we start, why don't you just introduce yourself to us, everyone listening today?
All right. I'm Rose Punkunus, as Amanda mentioned, technology founder for Sudozi, mom of two boys, 4 and 6, and also prior volleyball coach, and just really been a data nerd and passionate about data and technology my whole life. And so started Sudozi a little over 5 years ago.
Okay, so where did you play volleyball?
Yes, I played in high school and in college. I played Division III, and we made it all the way to the Sweet 16 for NCAAs. Yeah.
Where did you play?
I played at MIT, the nerdiest place you can play volleyball, but
so
very
you were
actually
smart
competitive.
and played volleyball. Okay, all right. I played at Carthage College, a little bit different of a university experience. Very small, lovely school. Loved my experience there, but yes, was a setter and a right side hitter. So
we would have worked well together. I was an outside hitter.
All right, perfect. Well, let's go ahead and get started with the hot seat questions. Let me make sure before I start the timer that I have those questions in front of me. And let's go ahead and get started. So your first question, and this is like the softball question for any founder, provide a brief overview of your company.
All right, I'll be as brief as I can. So as you mentioned, my background has been in finance, and I've had the opportunity to really join some great companies. I joined Uber as a second strategic finance hire. I tell people we're funneling billions of dollars through QuickBooks Online, no procurement technology, really no any technology on Google Sheets and QuickBooks. And as I was able to rise through, as the company grew and ultimately became the US and Canada CFO, I saw an opportunity to actually leverage procurement more in the day-to-day of the business and bring in procurement earlier in the funnel to get involved with projects even before there was any sort of selection, really get that strategy mixed in with the business partner. Fast forward, I went to 2 other technology companies to be VP of Finance and CFO, and I saw similar gaps on the compliance side, as well as on the contract negotiation and the pricing strategy side. And so my biggest thing as a finance leader was that I saw other finance leaders not incorporating procurement soon enough and early enough in the company stage and also in the strategy of investments. So I built Sudozi really to help leaders both on the finance side as well as procurement side really take care of a lot of the ops so that the people on the team, whether it's sourcing or operations, can get involved with the business in a more seamless and collaborative way to really get to that strategy and add value to the businesses.
Okay, I love it. And I can't wait to see it in the demo portion today. Such a huge gap. I used to tell people all the time that finance and procurement were kind of like oil and water until legal walked into the room. And then that was a whole difference. Hopefully everyone watching can get the joke, but we're coming more and more together, which is great. So what is your competitive edge? Like what makes you different from the other ProcureTechs out there that are serving similar needs?
Yeah, I think it stems from the last question, right? Like, why are we doing this? We're not just like, honestly, like engineering founders looking for something to build. The team and I genuinely had this issue and saw these opportunities in past companies, which has manifested in the way that we've built our application. One of the key areas that we have is data for different segments and the ability to translate accounting data into procurement category data, into FP&A data, and really leveraging technology to communicate between teams. So that's one core competitive edge of like the type of data you can have in Sudozi to facilitate those conversations.
Fantastic. Okay, so we have 12 minutes left. We're doing fine on time.
Okay, great.
We have, let's see, 5 more questions to go. So target audience, who do you typically sell to?
Yeah, we have sold to companies that are as small as a couple hundred employees through several thousand employees. And, revenue size couple, let's say close to 100 million or nearing there through several billion in revenue. But I would say the differentiation is with the type of business. And initially when we started out, we were not targeting non-technology companies. But these days we actually partner with many non-technology in healthcare or other professional services, because every company has some sort of indirect, has some sort of procurement challenge going on internally. And what we found is that at the core, relationships between teams and important UI and collaboration, that really doesn't matter in what type of industry. Like that is important no matter what industry you're in.
Correct.
And so I would say on the small end, it's hard to use Sudozi or any procurement platform if you're small or just getting started. But we haven't found a limit on the larger end of things that we couldn't solve for this pay space.
Do you have any geographical limitations? Like, are you selling mostly in the United States today? Are you selling overseas? Where are your key markets?
We primarily sell to companies that are headquartered in the United States, but our customers are global. I think when we last checked the database, it's like 20 something time zones that have logged into our application. So yes.
That is awesome. Okay. Similar to us too. Actually, I'm going to pause real quick. Yeah, hold on. I have a dog barking. Hold on.
Yeah, no worries.
Usually my microphone's okay, but I didn't want to, I don't know if you could hear the dog barking. Okay. All right. Paused. All right. Now, so that was a lovely answer to the last question. We have a very similar market, like we sell into US, but it's global in nature. So let's go on to question number 4, pricing structure. And I always tell people I don't need a price, like that's not what we're talking about here, but like, how do you model your pricing? What do people have to keep in mind when they're talking to you about that?
Yeah. Typically we will charge, and we try to align the pricing to the value that the companies are receiving. At the very basic technical level, we'll charge by full enterprise, how many employees, because we do solve sort of the intake and orchestration part of the challenge. So what is your overall employee base? And then what sort of integrations do you need? And what sort of complexity do you need? And so those are the two by two key metrics. And we are interested and happy to work on commercials if we can solve a problem inside a company, and we want to deliver value to our customers.
Oh, I love that. Okay. Yeah, that's like a true CFO kind of answer. I love very value focused. I love it. Okay. So let's talk about the future. Let's get a crystal ball out.
Yeah.
Like, what is the future looking like for your company?
Yeah, so I had a post on this yesterday on LinkedIn, and some people actually didn't realize. So I don't know, Amanda, if this resonates with you. Let's call it 20 years ago when Under Armour and all these like men's athletic gear companies were trying to sell to women. What they did was shrink it and pink it, right? And these shirts and these pants looked really awkward, but they were pink. And that was their category of women's clothing. And I think that technology with SaaS and with AI is going to go through a similar revolution, where a lot of technology today, the companies that we are all very familiar with, will have a layer of AI on top of it. And that is, in my perspective, the version of pink it and shrink it, because the underlying data structure the UI is very different, right? Like we don't go to
Yes.
ChatGPT and click on a bunch of filters and hope to, get our results out. We
Yeah.
go and we prompt. And so I'm not saying we have all of that in our technology today. It's certainly not all there, but that is the vision where we uniquely have the data underlying it that is different from other providers, and being able to think holistically from back end to front end, not only in the technology, but then also to how teams will interact, right? How will procurement, how will your sourcing manager get involved in the future? And so thinking of that workflow more holistically is where our technology go. And there are some obvious feature things that we are doing differently that we'll be continuing to build on. And say very tactically, getting our sourcing feature more robust, getting more compliance, third-party supplier management, ongoing relationship management. Those are some features that we are building out as well. But we can go down a list of like near-term roadmap, but from a vision perspective, we want to make sure that we are aligning to where the procurement profession is going.
I love that. Okay, and so needed because it's going to be shifting quite a bit over time. Yeah. Which is a good thing. All right, let's talk about success stories. Can you give us an example of a client who has had a ton of success with you, and what was the impact?
I'll go through a client we recently, in Q1 went live with. They are a multi-billion-dollar public company in the travel space. They have run a really lean procurement team. They have one procurement director with a couple folks supporting her, but just one director with a global procurement leader. And we were able to replace their internal ticketing system and bring on 4 other neighboring teams, so compliance, legal, IT, accounting, that were using their siloed intake tools separately. We were able to do that implementation go live within a 3-month period. So
that's fast.
We were able to not only successfully do that, but then also get the engagement, right? Like it's great that you can stand up a tool, but can people actually use it? And will you get intake? And they're getting close to 100% of the previous intake into our system, integrated with some of their other tools that they're using.
Fantastic. Okay, so let's talk about, because there's always lessons learned, right? Even on the best implementations, there's always lessons learned. So let's talk about the most common mistakes or lessons that leaders learn when they're deploying your solution.
Yeah, and I don't even, it's, as we all go through this technology revelation in our personal lives and in our work lives, there's going to be iteration, because you don't fully know what the technology is capable of until you see it, until you interact with it, right? And so when we're doing the pre-implementation and the scoping, it's one, don't overthink it, because then you never get going, but also think a little bit outside the box. Think about, okay, what if we didn't have our existing processes? What would be our North Star? And then come back to a happy medium. So I think one of the things people do, even when they're evaluating technology, is, does this technology fit into my current process? And there's more and more opportunity, especially with what CFOs are demanding and CEOs are demanding, to actually rethink your process and then think about what technology would be best for that. So that would be one general category of area I would encourage leaders to consider.
I love that. When we go out and we talk about change adoption, one of the levers is process design, right? And technology runs along that, but then you also have policies and org design and all of that. But it all kind of has to come together. So a technology deployment is a perfect time to reassess what you could do from a process standpoint. And so many, I actually like to encourage people like to talk to providers like yourselves, because you see what other clients are doing and say, what is best in class look like in your solution, and start there and talk about why that doesn't work for you. Right. And then you get the nuance out, but you start from a completely different starting point. And
it's totally fine if you don't want to change, right? If you think these are the teams I'm interacting with, they're not going to change, so I'm going to keep this current process. And that we've seen that, and that's totally fine. But being able to actually have that data and think about that data, I think that's what is going to keep the innovators up front.
Ah, I love that. Okay. And you're definitely an innovator. So what we're going to do, you did that within like with a minute left. So
Okay.
good job. Um, even with my brief pause in the middle. So let's hand it over to you to do the product demo. And for everyone listening, the way that we do this is we go through the 15-minute Q&A, then we do a 15-minute demo, and then Rose will drop off, and I will do 3 things that I loved about today and 3 things that I don't quite love yet. And usually that's like futuristic things. It has, like what if this is possible type of commentary. So please stay tuned for that last segment after Rose is done with the demo. Rose, once you're done with the demo, I'll let you say some kind of parting words before we have you drop off. Sound
Sure.
good? All right.
Great.
Cool. So I am going to take myself off of mute. I will come back on camera when you have a minute left if we
Can
get
you
to
give
that
me,
point.
actually give me 1 second.
Okay.
I need to double confirm this other account I want to
Okay.
use as part of the demo.
That's fine.
Sorry.
Nope. Completely fine.
Thank you. You know how you get logged out of these accounts, like you're
I
logged
know.
in and then like,
Yeah. And then you're like, darn it, I'm
yeah,
logged out already.
yes, why did that happen? Here, and then make sure that I can get this message. I noticed, are you okay if I also demo with the Outlook screens? I noticed some of your prior participants didn't want to necessarily include like another technology in
No,
there.
you were fine. You
Okay.
do the best demo that you can do.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good. Give me 30 more seconds here.
Yep.
Let me just
That's
confirm
fine.
this one thing. And oh shoot, attach instead. Okay. Mary Marketing is sending this through. Okay. Okay.
All right.
Perfect.
Ready?
We are ready to go.
Okay, I'm going to start the timer.
And then I'll share screen.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining this part of the conversation. I have 15 minutes. We are not going to be able to demo intake to pay in 15 minutes. So I'm going to demo 3 key sections of our application that are used most highly by our customers, and we've gotten the most positive feedback on. All right, so let me share screen here to get going. The window, and here we go. All right. So the first section I want to share is the intake and orchestration. We're going to walk through submission of a new request, integrations with Outlook and Slack in this demo example. We can integrate with a number of different workflow tools, ticketing tools, ERPs for PO creation, etc. Then I'm going to step back and demo our vendor management section and our analytics section, which are differentiators from other platforms that are out there. And I think the key thing for us is it's actually possible to have an intake and orchestration solution that has your analytics as well and has a vendor repository. So I want to demonstrate that in this example. All right. Right now, we're working through a live case where you have a number of projects going. This view is customizable. You can have different columns. You can have different request categories. So this is all highly customizable by company, even by team, depending on what you and your colleagues are trying to achieve. Now, if I go into, for the purpose of the demo, I'm going to actually go ahead and duplicate an existing ticket that's been created, just to highlight some of the elements that are out there. So you can see here I was in a marketing and consulting one. I can go into an Asana one that has more complex workflows, and I'll go ahead and duplicate this just so you can see the configurations available. Now, again, everything you see here is easily customizable within the application. So I'll go ahead and continue. We see a welcome screen. Sometimes you point out to a different guidance that you want to give to your employees as they're starting out. I can request on behalf of someone else, and we typically pull in these data points connected to your Okta, your Duo, your Active Directory, so that we are not necessarily housing the membership, but we're reading your membership from a different system that you're using. We can actually automate vendor onboarding, vendor forms. So if you share a vendor email address, we can actually do that directly within our system. All right, so some other basic fields. These fields are customizable that you can ask your colleagues to answer. So you can see the budget. I've attached a demo document. I have different categories, and these are just some responses that we have here. And finally, parting words. Usually we see our teams give guidance. Here's the example of, this type of request typically takes, X number of weeks. If you have any questions, come talk to this other person. So we see teams giving guidance here as a final step. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and submit this request. And now from our backend system that the workflow that you configured, we've decided that these are the steps that would be needed and that would be helpful in completing this project. You can see that any of these fields here, you can comment to the requester and you can have visibility to any of the items here. And we'll go through and actually, let's say I have a colleague, my colleague Freya is busy, she's on Slack, she's doing other things, and I can actually just comment to Freya here. Can you look at this? In addition to commenting, we have manual reminder features. We can also set auto reminders directly as well. Now, I'm going to jump over to Freya. Freya's busy. She has other things she's doing. She's doing forecasting. And let's say she wants to just reply here and say, this is great, but I'm busy. And so she can actually just reply in Slack. She does not need to log into Sudozi, and her comment will thread this comment here. You can see it on the FP&A block. You can also see it directly on the comments panel for this request. Now, let's say she's actually ready to go ahead and approve the request. Again, she can come into Slack and say approve. And that'll just happen directly in the application. And so then that would come in here. I'll actually go ahead and let's say I want to bypass this. I can bypass it directly in here as well if she didn't want to come into the application. All right, so if we move on, the Jira ticket, we have this Jira integration with our application. And so the Jira ticket can be created automatically within Sudozi, and you are customizing which fields you want to send over to Jira, which documents you want to send over, what are the relevant pieces of information for your colleagues who need to operate in Jira. This is just an example of one of the ticketing systems. We can operate with a number of different ticketing systems in here. All right, I'm going to bypass this as well for demo purposes, and we'll continue moving on in the application. Now here, we actually automatically sent out a compliance form. This is something that you can configure if you want a different document, different tiering. So we sent out a compliance form to our supplier email address directly because we want to get them started on this. Another integration we have is with Middesk. So this is an example of a business verification. If you have a TIN or other sort of payment onboarding verification you want to get going immediately, you can go ahead and do that directly within our system. And we actually look at a number of SOS filings and different watch lists, and you get a report out for the company that you're looking for directly in here as part of the workflow. All right, now we're on to legal. So our favorite part. We can integrate with a number of CLMs, but let's say you want to just discuss with your legal colleague directly in here. Let's say I want to tag Mary here. Take a look at this. I can comment to Mary, and let's say Mary has a version of the red line that she's been reviewing and she needs to review to send back. Like many of us, we're busy. We have a couple things we're doing. You may not want to log into a separate tool. So what Mary can do is actually she can reply directly in here and include the document that she wants to attach directly on email. And so if I just dragged and dropped it, I'll attach it as a file here, and I can send this back to Sudozi. And Mary has not needed to leave her workspace to do that. Let me go back here and refresh. And so what you'll see is this demo contract doc, redline version 500 will be synced over in here. And we do have a document management to actually capture that directly in the application. And that'll be synced on the legal redlines. I'll start task and say completed. And now we're finally at the PO stage. So for now, I'm not going to, we can create a NetSuite PO or other sort of POs depending on what your PO to pay systems are. But you can actually directly integrate that and have that connected in here as part of the workflow. Let me go back to the request page. So now we have a mini status bar on the overall request page. And again, our goal here is as your chief procurement officer, your CFO, your finance business partner, they're not going to be going into the details of every single request. But if they want to, they can, right? So they have a quick snapshot. This is downloadable. You can customize the type of columns you want based on the request type and really have advanced filters. You can customize your own filters, and that's all very personable within here. So that's one area I wanted to show, just the ease of use from an end user coming in to either duplicate a prior request or submit a net new request directly in here, and for other colleagues to stay in their applications without having to come back to Sudozi. All right, the second area I wanted to show that is a differentiator is the ability to capture vendor data and store vendor data in a way that preserves the parent-child relationship. I'm actually going to jump into this instance here where you can see we have a number of different vendors in the platform. If I'm searching for Salesforce, we can search through that quickly. We're able to connect with your ERP and aggregate different ERP vendors. And so if you have one vendor you're working with that has multi-entity, and for some reason they're stored as 3 different vendors or 3 different suppliers, we can actually roll that up into one here. And you can customize the type of information you want to store. We store the different vendors from your ERP into one system here. Now within this repository, you can see the different types of information we store. It's a parent-child relationship for that vendor. And so here's some general information, again, all customizable. You can see the different requests that we've had related to this vendor. We can see the financial analysis, which I'll get back to in a second. And you can also see the services. Now, the services is a key item that differentiates us in terms of our data structure and how we aligned with how companies partner with their suppliers. Typically, you have more than one order form. You have multiple things going on with one major supplier. And what we're able to do here is allow you to keep track of who the main service owner is. And maybe they have different departments that they're in. And you're able to track that information in a customized way. So if I were to click down into this Marketing Cloud SKU here, we can see different pieces of information, different pricing, different reminder dates for that SKU. And hopefully your main things are co-termed, but sometimes things aren't, and we allow you to track that in a parent-child relationship. And this way you can also link documents that way. So you have an MSA at the parent level, and then you have several orders or addendums or other documents related to each of these services. That's something we're able to allow you to track directly in our application. Now, off of this service data, we can generate a number of different workflows as well as reports. And I'll show you a quick service renewal calendar here. So here's an example of a report where we're automatically contacting the service owner the number of days you prefer ahead of time, both on Slack and email, to remind them that they have a renewal coming up. And this is something where you can export a report, but it also can kick off a workflow, and it can link to a specific request type that you want them to fill out. So let's say you want them to fill out the renewal request type or the plugin or add-on request type. You can have that be more seamless from end to end within the application here. All right, so that's a quick overview on the vendor module. Now, the last thing I want to showcase is on the financials. We have a really powerful analytics platform built in directly to Sudozi so that you don't have to go to your ERP to find invoice data, accrual actual data, and other data related to a vendor. So here's a sample of us pulling in, this would, in real life be dozens of pages. Here's a sample of us pulling in your ERP data. that is related to specific vendors. Now, if I wanted to go back a little bit further, and let's say I wanted to search on them, I wanted to search for Zoom, you can see how snappy this is and how quick this is to search for versus going into your ERP and pivoting and finding the right report. Any of these custom reports can be exported. You can save them and come back to them if you need. But the searchability, and then you can also link to your ERP if you want. So the searchability and the ability to actually get the data to answer questions and to drive business forward is, I think, unparalleled in here, even on the same type of data you have in your ERP. Now, not only are we pulling over a set of transactions, we have other analytics features in here that allow you to slice and dice the data in a way that's relevant to you and your team. So here's just an example of me looking at some actuals. Let's say I'm just looking at January through April for some specific categories. You can filter down different things in here and really have more complex visibility to what's going on within your data. In addition to actuals, we allow companies to store budgets. Your FP&A teams, your finance partners have spent months, if not quarters, working on these budgets. And what we hear is sometimes, hey, like I don't actually know what the budget is for this department, or has FP&A budgeted for this set of vendors, or is it not material enough to budget for? And so you actually can store this type of information directly in here and see the comparison from your actuals that you've spent, and also layer on the requests. And so I can see, hey, for June, I've already requested, 35,000 out of my 73,000 budget. And this you can drill down and you have different ability to, track on actuals and different linkages across the application here. So I don't know how I'm doing on time, Amanda, but
you have 30 seconds left.
Okay, high level overview. There's a lot more I could show, but I'd say our core purpose is to help procurement teams be able to translate and connect better with their colleagues to get information and get projects earlier in the funnel. And so with our intake, with our vendor management, and then with our financial analytics and analysis, that's the primary way that we partner with our businesses.
Awesome. So Rose, by the way, that was a great demo. Before we part ways, yes. Do you have any final thoughts that you want to share with the audience today?
My thought would be this experience has been so fascinating to me. There has not been one procurement professional I've met who I haven't learned from. And I am so grateful for this opportunity to work with so many different strategy professionals and really help think about how to make better investments for the company. I would say moving forward, there's definitely going to be impact of AI. And so how can we be leaders of that rather than order takers from other people who decide what we should be doing, right? And so how can you be innovative and think about what to introduce to the company that's going to accelerate better decision-making, better investments, and more savings.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Rose. Up next is 3 things I loved about today and 3 things that I don't quite love yet. So thank you, Rose, for everything today and for sharing your passion with us. It truly shows.
All right. Thanks, Amanda.
Thank you.
I'll catch you later.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. Wow, what an amazing ProcureTech Wonders with Rose from Sudozi. I always am really a fan of learning about new tech. The amount of intake and orchestration tools in procurement right now is insane. And each of them, what I like to tell people, and my clients in particular, is that each of them have a bit of a different starting point. One thing that I love about them is that they were really finance focused, which you see sometimes within procurement, but there are other solutions that are really procurement focused, other solutions that are started out of legal and that interaction between procurement and legal. So everyone has a different starting point, which I just adore. So I'm glad that there are people coming into the industry saying, hey, we need to do a better job between procurement and finance, and we need to put our finance hat on to help drive more strategic procurement within the procurement profession. So I just love the concept of what they're doing within Sudozi. Now, with that said, three things that I love, three things that I don't quite love yet. It was really hard for me on the don't love yet piece, but I have a couple of things to consider, and I'm looking at my notes because I wrote a ton of them during the demo. So I truly like that their focus around development, and you could see this in the demo, was that they have a data focus and a value focus. So it's not just about operational efficiency, but like what's the outcome that we're trying to achieve? How are we trying to track the finances around this? How are we showing our value as procurement? And so I think that's also something that I love about that is not only shifting procurement from this transactional cost only focused area to more of a value add, but then it also from a company standpoint allows them, if they're truly data focused on the back end, to really go into this next generation of AI and what that has coming for us. So I think that is kind of a 2-for-1, that they have that value focus, but they're also positioning themselves really effectively for AI. I love the concept too, and I think I've brought this up on other ProcureTech Wonders of they're going to where people are already at. So you saw in the demo the integration into Outlook, and this is my second point that I loved, is that they are focusing on, okay, so we not everyone wants to go into another application to get work done. What if we just integrate into Outlook or other email capability, and then they can interact with the system right where people are already spending a lot of their time. Now, email might be less of where we spend time moving forward. So I'll get to that here a little bit later on. But the concept is really great where people, these new products that are coming on, especially if they're in the orchestration intake standpoint, as you're looking at those solutions, think about less of an application and getting more data and interaction to where people already are at. I think that is the key and the gold with whatever we're doing. And then the third one is really around just the ease of use and the understanding of how procurement and finance work together. I joked with Rose during the conversation that when I first started in procurement, finance and procurement were kind of oil and water, and sometimes you still see that. So the more that we can, as procurement professionals, operate with a financial kind of hat on, I think the better that we can showcase our value long term. So that they do have that kind of finance feel and understanding goes a really long way. So that is the third thing that I loved about what I saw today that really is different than maybe some of the other applications that are in this space. Okay, three things that I don't quite love yet that I saw today. And again, this is just what I saw in the demo today. So when I go into these conversations, I didn't see like a 3-hour long demo before I interviewed Rose. So this is just what I saw today during that interview. So one of the first things is I mentioned the Outlook integration. I think nowadays, like when I look at my kids and even young people that are coming into the workforce, I think email is going to become kind of this old functionality that not a lot of people are going to be using moving forward. So think about like Slack and my Teams channel every single day. Other ways of more like chat interaction and file sharing, video interactions. It's kind of cool now. So thinking broader than just email, maybe they do have integrations into those other things, but it is really great to be thinking about like truly not only where people are today, but how are people going to be doing work 3 years from now? And I think there's an opportunity to make sure that they're thinking through meeting people where they're at 3 years from now versus just where they're at today. Also in the demo, and that's number 2, what I don't quite yet love about it, and Rose alluded to this in the interview, is that they need more functionality around like sourcing and contract management and more of that feel into the process. I think they're getting there, and obviously she mentioned that they're getting there, but thinking through, okay, like when we think about orchestration and intake and how that process works, are we going to be building it internally within the four walls of our application, or are we going to integrate and push into maybe other applications that are already existing? And I see that they have an opportunity, especially with that finance lens, to really get into more of that within their solution. So that would be my number two. And I really struggled with number three. I guess my third one. I'm really debating on this, but I loved the part where Rose looked at those dashboards and how they're measuring the outcomes and the value that procurement is achieving and where things are at in the process itself. I think there's one thing that maybe Rose touched on, but I didn't see a lot of, is that we want to be operationally efficient when we are going through these orchestration tools. So I think equal as how much are we managing, how are we managing it, what's the value we're receiving from that management, is embedding into the process itself. How are we doing operationally? So I'm not talking about like a dashboard on that, but like when somebody is in the system, how do they know how long it's supposed to take? Like, can we offer them information in the transaction itself to say, on average, if you go and you submit this request, it's going to take X days or X hours. On average, this transaction is going to go through 3 approvals. The more insights we can do operationally within the process, the less people feel like procurement is a black box that they just don't understand. So I think there's an opportunity not only for what we're talking about today, but we're thinking about that across all of the ProcureTech around how can we leverage the data and the insights that we're gathering from our clients and make it more transparent within the process. So that is my number 3. So I hope you loved today's video. I love bringing ProcureTech Wonders to you because there are so many different ProcureTechs out there that truly are phenomenal. They're shaping the ways of working today and well into the future. So if you love this video, hit the like, hit the subscribe, and we'll be bringing you another ProcureTech Wonder here shortly.